so we're able to get this recording live to everybody in the division and beyond. But hey, welcome to Six Figure Finances. Now, a couple of things as we're diving in here. First off, if I at any point today either look weird, talk weird, or smile weird, you'll have to excuse me. I just got my wisdom teeth, again, all four just yanked out of my face today, like this morning. So, and I can't smile properly. So you'll have to excuse that. Second thing here is today, three main topics that we're going to be talking about. We have quite a bit to go through. So just make sure that you are ready to be taking notes, pen and paper, notes on your laptop in front of you. Just give me a big old thumbs up to the screen here if you got notes, something to take notes on in front of you here. Awesome. We got a lot of content to get through. And you're going to definitely want to make sure that you are paying very close attention to all of it, because this will be one of, if not the most important pieces of content or message that you will hear all year. These are going to be things that you're going to be able to take with you, not just with you this year in 2022, but 5-10 years down the line, and also something that you can be cognizant of as you're building generational wealth. So 3 topics for today. We're going to talk about money mindset, credit cards, and finance tracking. Now, depending on how we're doing on time, we might not cover everything in finance tracking. However, I am going to be leading a call 1 week from today, Wednesday, the last week of February, at 9:30 p.m. So right after the team meeting. And I'm going to do a live walkthrough of how I track my finances, all 4 forms of tracking finances, and do an active Q&A session for anyone that is interested. So, and I left finance tracking for last because it is the most intuitive portion of this, where I'll send out the templates for finance tracking, and it takes you through exactly how to do it. And like I said, it is pretty intuitive. So I'll spend the least amount of time on that. And then I'll have a follow-up Q&A session during that finance tracking 1 week from today, 9:30 p.m. And by the way, I do those sessions every 2 weeks, and it's an open invite on the same Zoom code that we are currently on. Cool. Now, the reason why we always kick off with money mindset is I want you to imagine it's similar to the reason why if you take a dirty bowl, it's a bowl and it's super dirty, and you try to fill that dirty bowl with clean water, it's the same reason why when you're surprised that it doesn't come out as clean water, is the same reason why we're going to start with clearing out the bad money mindset that you may or may not be coming into this call with. And we're going to fill it with clean water in a clean bowl so that you're able to take good, healthy habits and put them on top of a clean money mindset. Does that make sense to everyone? Give me a thumbs up, a fist bump if you're fired up about that. Dope. All righty. So then let's just dive right in. And again, I'm going to be sticking and moving, so you'll have to pardon my brevity as we get rolling here. The first thing that I want to acknowledge is that every single one of us, myself included, is coming into this call with some sort of a money blueprint. That is a pre-programmed money blueprint. And this comes from 3 sources in our lives. Verbal sources. It comes from modeling what you see, either modeling in a positive way or rebelling against it. And 3 specific incidences that we encounter in our lives that shape our money blueprint. The number one that affects most people is this verbal one. Show of hands here. Raise your hand if your parents talked about money a lot growing up. Like it was a positive topic. Like they were really open about it. Like you know what your parents make, you know what they invest in. Like you guys are really plugged. Okay, I don't see a ton of hands. Now raise your hand if money was a taboo topic growing up and your family did not talk about it. Don't really know how much your parents make. Oh, Anna, it's rude to ask how much people make, right? Now, usually people don't talk about money because they either make, in their eyes, too much or too little. Raise your hand if you've ever heard someone refer to money as the root of all evil. You ever heard that expression before? Okay, cool. Almost everybody. Raise your hand if you've ever heard someone associate negative human qualities with having a lot of money, like millionaires are bad people, billionaires are bad people. In order to make $1 million, you have to do bad things. Okay, a ton of people, majority of people on this call. Now, raise your hand if it is possible that those stereotypes of money being the root of all evil or millionaires being bad people might have something to do with the way that someone views success. Raise your hand if that makes any sort of sense. Like, this is something I've heard. I've heard growing up that associated money with negative people, or you're a bad person because of it. And then what happens is that people go, okay, if I become successful, and now my people from the small town that I grew up in see that now I'm in their eyes wealthy or I'm financially successful, they're going to associate me with what I've heard my whole life, which is that people who make a lot of money are bad people. Is it possible that that might be something that hinders someone from achieving financial success? Absolutely, right? And we'll talk about that in just a little bit more detail in a little bit. But the second thing is people that we model or rebel against. So when I say rebel against, this is something like I had a friend of mine that would say something like, well, we never went out to eat when I was young. And so now I'm going to eat out all the time. And that's a reflection of them rebelling against what they experienced in their childhood and them developing negative habits around money in their adult lives. A positive way to model, and these can go both ways, right? Positive and negative. A positive way to model this is I saw my parents investing in real estate my whole life. And I saw them in the stock market go up and down, but play the long game. And so now I know that I feel comfortable with investing. Or negatively, it could be, well, my family has always been poor. That means I'm always going to be poor. So it's modeling things that we see growing up. And then the third thing are specific incidences like lose money once and then, okay, I'm never going to invest again. Or meet one rude millionaire or read an article about how millionaires are rude to people in cafes. And then we associate all wealthy people with that person, right? So do we all see how money blueprints are formed and how this shapes or bars us from achieving financial success? Can I get a hand raise? Can I get a fist bump? Can I get a head nod, something? Okay, great. Now, I do want to go back to what I mentioned about wealth and the characteristics that are associated with wealth. Is it actually true? Like, I want you to think about this actually. Is it true that millionaires are bad people? That as soon as you become a millionaire, you're automatically a bad person? Does that actually make sense when you say that in your brain? No, right? Now, people look down on rich people usually because they resent what they have created and it reminds them of their own forgotten goals and dreams. It's the same way, like the classic bully example. The bully often bullies the nerd because they don't have good grades. It's something they're insecure about. And then they look down on success because it just reminds them of what they're not achieving. So just something to remember as we're going through this to start to reshape the way that you view money and the way that you view financial success. Okay. And money, side note here, money only makes you more of what you already are. If someone is a person that lives in scarcity mindsets and they acquire money, it's just going to amplify that scarcity mindset. If someone is a bad person and they have disregard for human life and other people, having money is just going to amplify that. On the flip side, if someone is a great person, now they have money to do great with, right? And it's going to amplify their characteristics. So money only makes you more of what you already are. And show of hands, do you think that that you can help the world more when you're rich or when you're poor? Raise your hand if you think that you can help the world more when you're poor. Raise your hand if you think you can help the world more if you're rich. What? Great, glad we're all on the same page. We were able to go in here and talk about how to reprogram yourself so that you can open yourself up to financial success. All right, so let's talk about how to reprogram yourself. And I hear a couple of people that are unmuted. So hey, if you guys could make sure that you are staying muted, that would be awesome. All right, so 4 ways to reprogram yourself. The first part is awareness, understanding that everybody, or being aware that everybody has a blueprint that they are coming into this call with. So we've knocked that first step off, boom, check, awesome. The second thing is understanding what that blueprint actually is. So I'm going to give you a list of action steps that I want you to take leaving this call. And the first action step that I want you to jot down right now is discover what your blueprint is. And I want you to think about, how have you heard about money growing up? And ask yourself the question, does my family have a positive or negative view around money? Is this because they make too little in their eyes, or they make too much in their eyes and they don't want to share that? What has led to me having the money blueprint that I have currently? How often did I hear money being discussed in the home? And there are some people, by the way, on this call that are very uncomfortable right now. Like, they're uncomfortable listening to me even talk about money and financial success. And if that's you right now, don't worry. First off, you're not alone. I have had definitely feelings of just like, there's some sort of resistance, like, wow, we never talked about this. So I feel uncomfortable having these sorts of conversations now. It's just different than what you're used to. And that's awareness of your money blueprint, and then diving into what that blueprint actually is. The third step is disassociation. Disassociating yourself from what your negative money blueprint is. Now, you can associate yourself with the positive things, but if you have this sort of generational, this is just an example. Let's say that one of the things that you tell yourself is, well, my family's always been poor, so I'm going to be poor because that's just how it goes. The way you dissociate is you say, okay, that was them. This is me. That was them. This is me. This is what I'm going to do. I am not my parents. I am not my grandparents. That was them. This is me. And dissociating yourself. And we're going to talk about mindset differences between those who are rich and those who are poor. And we're going to talk about what that means in just a couple of slides. And then the fourth step is declaration. These are kind of like affirmations, but affirmations are more so visualizing something in a way that it's already completed. Like, I am a master developer of people. I have 10 people in my TLA program around me. I have, this staff. I have a great staff, and it's visualizing something and saying it as if it's already done. A declaration is something like, a couple examples is, hand on your heart, I create the exact level of my financial success. Or my goal is to become a millionaire and more. Or every dollar I touch multiplies tenfold. I am open to the universe making me more money. And as we go through, there are a couple of declarations that you can put together depending on what feels most true to you. Okay. So let's talk about some differences between a poor and let's talk about the differences between a poor and a rich mindset. Now, I understand in using these terms that I am generalizing heavily. There's a point to that. I am stereotyping heavily right now. It's just that for the purpose of this message, this is the way that I'm going to be delivering this content. And by the way, all of this that I've been mentioning so far is from one of my favorite books on finances, around money, around wealth building, around success, called Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. And we're going to talk about the 17 wealth files from this book. And by the way, it's not just about being poor or being rich. It's all about the mindset. We've all heard, as you can see on the screen here, we've all heard the story about the lottery winner that won $1 million and then proceeded to lose it all and become the same amount of poor, if not even more poor than they were when before they first acquired that $1 million or more. And it's because they became rich, but they had the same money blueprint that they had when they were poor. So they had money, they were rich, but they had a poor money mindset. And so they proceeded to fall back down to the level of their poor money mindset. Okay. So when we go through this, don't think about it quite as much as someone who's poor and rich, although many times this is going to align exactly. But we're thinking about mindsets here. Now, there are 17 of these. So we're going to be sticking and moving through them. I'd prefer if you guys took pictures of these rather than trying to write all of them down, because then the chat box is going to blow up with people asking me to go back, which is fine. If you want me to repeat something quickly or you want me to go back a slide, no worries, feel free to speak up. But I just want to make sure that we get all of this content. And again, just to preface this, there are 17. And so not every single one of these is going to hit the same way for every single person, but the goal is that there are 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 that you look at and you're like, wow, I need to make a change in my life, or wow, I see how this has negatively impacted me, or I see how this has positively impacted me. So really what we're trying to accomplish in going through these is not for you to like do a deep analysis of each of them. If you want to do that, read the book, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. But I just want to get our mindset in the right place and introduce you guys to some of these key differences. Alrighty, give me a thumbs up if we're ready to go on to 17 wealth files, differences between a rich and a poor mindset. Alrighty, number 1, rich people believe I create my life versus poor people believing that life happens to me. Another way to say this is that rich people don't adopt ever a victim mentality, and they take full ownership over their results, versus poor people adopting a victim mentality of, why does this keep happening to me? A lot of times they actually say that out loud. Why does this happen to me? Why does this keep happening to me? Instead of recognizing that they are in full control of their life. Now, are there extenuating circumstances? Absolutely. Does luck play a factor? Absolutely. But you'd be surprised how much luck goes into something when people work really hard and are really intentional and take accountability, versus people who are the exact opposite of all those things I just mentioned. Number 2, rich people play the money game to win. Poor people play the money game to not lose. Another way to say this is that rich people think in terms of wealth and abundance, versus poor people trying to just get to a point where they're paying the bills. So I'll ask people, I'm like, hey, tell me a little bit about your financial goals. And they'll tell me something like, I just want to get to a point where I can pay my bills. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. But when we're thinking about rich versus poor mentality, there's a key difference between someone that's going after wealth and abundance and someone who's trying to just pay the bills. Number 3, rich people are committed to being rich. Poor people want to be rich. There's a difference between interest and commitment. If we were to relate this to our business, there's a reason why 50% of the training class, every single training, tells me, Anna, I want to have a 10K fast start. And there's a reason why 50% of people tell me that, but only 1% of people in the company ever actually have a 10K fast start. Because there's a huge difference between being interested in that and actually being committed to do the right things to achieve that. Number 4, rich people think big, poor people think small. If I were to relate this again to Cutco, if you hope to sell $3,000, you'll probably fall short. Versus if you strive for 100K in the year and you believe you can do it and you put forth the effort that requires, you probably will. Do we see the difference there? Someone who's hoping to sell 3K in their career and someone that's like, I want to go after 100K. Can we just visualize what the difference in their results is going to be on a week-to-week basis? So rich people think big, poor people think small. Number 5, rich people focus on opportunities, poor people focus on obstacles. A lot of times when going after a large goal, people who have a poor mentality will focus on all the reasons why they can't hit that goal, versus someone that's in a rich mindset will think about all of the reasons why they will. And they'll think about all of the ways that they can hit that goal, all the people that they can involve with them, who not how, to achieve that goal. They'll think about the vision, the mentality that's required to hit that goal. They're not thinking about the teeny obstacles that somehow prevent them from achieving this large goal that they have, right? Okay, so that's first 5. Moving on to the next slide here. Number 6, rich people admire other rich and successful people. Poor people resent rich and successful people. This goes back to the bully analogy. People who say things like, oh, money is the root of all evil. Oh, rich people are not good people. Do you think those people are poor or rich? What do you think? Someone chime in here. Someone who says rich people are bad people, or money is the root of all evil. Do you think those people are more likely to be poor or rich?
Poor.
Poor, right? Well, that's like a no-brainer. Like we all get how that works conceptually. And so rich people admire other rich and successful people. How can you put this into practice? Maybe it's following 3 to 4 people on social media that you want to model your life with. Or maybe it's listening to podcasts from rich and successful people, listening to a money podcast, listening to people, admiring people, modeling your life after people who have what you want. Number 7, rich people associate with positive, successful people. Poor people associate with negative or unsuccessful people. We've all heard before the power of circle of influence, circle of influence, circle of influence. There's a lot of studies done on the likelihood of someone to get a divorce if there's someone very, very close to them that has also had a divorce, or the likelihood of someone to become obese if they have a close friend of theirs that is obese. There are a lot of studies around this that shows that you have a significantly higher chance of doing something if your friends are doing or have done that thing. So if you surround yourself with people who are smokers and you don't want to smoke, well, guess what? You're eventually going to become a smoker. It's almost inevitable. So rich people associate with positive, successful people. An action step from this one is evaluate your circle. Ask yourself, are the people around me contributing positively to my life, or are they contributing negatively to my life? And sometimes these can be really tough decisions to make, who you spend less time with in your life, because sometimes it can even be family members. And I'm not saying that you absolutely need to cut out every single one person in your life that is negative, but it's taking a look at how much time am I spending proportionally with people who are lifting me up versus people who are bringing me down. And it's just leveling out who you are going to be spending your time with. So maybe it's spending less time with those high school friends that smoke and aren't healthy and don't go, like they go out every single weekend and they spend a lot of money, or whatever habits it is that you don't want to be associated with. And maybe you're spending more time with people who read, or people who exercise, people who are really positive, people who are great students, and whatever it is that you're really excited to have in your life. And just take a look at your life holistically. Number 9, rich people are bigger than their problems. Poor people are smaller than their problems. Now, let's say that you are on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of your ability to solve problems. Let's say that you're at a 2. So that means that you're not very good at solving problems. Like maybe you haven't encountered a lot of problems in your life, or maybe you just get stressed out really easily, you have a lot of it's really difficult for you to overcome issues. If you encounter a problem that's a level 4 problem, do you think you're going to be able to overcome that problem? If you're at a level 2 and you encounter a level 4 problem, are you going to be able to overcome that obstacle? Yes or no? No, right? Nice, Ben. On the flip side, if you grow yourself to be a level 6 problem solver and you're able to overcome problems that are at a level 6, do you think that that same issue that what you wouldn't have been able to overcome at a level 2, do you think that issue is going to be easier or harder to overcome when you're at a level 6? Easier to overcome, right? And so again, rich people are bigger than their problems. They stretch their capacity. They purposefully do things that are hard to open up that capacity, right? People are like rubber bands. Rubber band right here. If I stretch this thing out to more than its capacity, it's never going to go back to its original shape. People are the exact same way. When you do things that are hard and you stretch your capacity, you too will never go back to your original shape. And so how can you stretch your ability to problem solve? How do you view problems? Do you view them as the end of the world, or is it no big deal, I can get over anything? Number 10, Rich people are excellent receivers. Poor people are poor receivers. Now, who's ever heard the phrase, oh, it feels way better to give a gift than it does to receive a gift? Have you ever heard that before? In a lot of cases, this is really true. It feels so good when you see someone's face light up, when you know that they're going to love something and you're so excited to give it to them. But there's definitely a way to take this too far, because it is very true. But you also have to consider that for every giver of a gift, there's also a receiver, or excuse me, for every receiver receiving end of a gift, there's also a giving end of the gift. So that means that you are going to be receiving, someone in the world is receiving at the same rate that someone in the world is giving. So you might as well get equally comfortable with receiving things. And the reason why this matters for wealth is that if you feel comfortable to receive in your life, you will attract money and you will attract being on the same wavelength of receiving. Whereas if you're really uncomfortable with receiving things, same thing, money is not going to flow to you. Number 11, rich people choose to get paid based on results. Poor people choose to get paid based on time. If you are on this call right now, I just want you to give yourself a big old pat on the back right here, because all of us, I want to see it. Yep, Christian, nice. Ben, I know it looks goofy, but I want to see it. Ben, nice. Okay. The reason I'm having you pat yourself on the back for this is because all of us on this call choose to get paid based on results and not based on our time. The reason why this is so important is that you can work super, super hard at anything. You can be the hardest worker at Chipotle, but at the end of the year, you're still going to have made the same amount of money as someone who didn't work hard at all. Here, if you work super, super hard, you're going to make like 10 times more as someone who doesn't put in effort and views their worth congruent to the time that they're putting into something. Do we all understand the concept of like why this is like why I'm having you pat yourself on the back for this? Awesome. Okay. Number 12, rich people think both. Poor people think either or. I love the power of the and, the power of the both. It's never either or. You can have your cake, you can eat it too. You don't have to sacrifice being fit for being successful financially. You can have time to achieve both. You don't have to sacrifice being a good student for being social. You can do both. So rich people think both in terms of their opportunities. Poor people think either or. Number 13, rich people focus on their net worth while poor people focus on their working income. Either today, if we have time, or next week on the tracking call that I do at 9:30 p.m. on Wednesdays, I am going to teach you guys how to track your net worth and the difference between net worth and working income. Can anyone just chime in and tell me what the difference is between net worth and working income? Yeah, Christian.
Okay, so I'm not really too keen on it, but your
Hit
net
me.
worth, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I thought you said you couldn't. My bad. Your net worth is how much you're valued at as a person based off everything you've done. Your working income is just only subjected to the funds that you bring in. So, for instance, you can bring in like $10,000, but your net worth be 20,000, and that accumulates over what you brought in, how much work you've actually put into it, what other credentials you have behind, and like other accolades that you've reached. So any awards or anything goes into your value as well. That's my
Nice.
understanding.
Nice. So to sum up what Christian is saying here, net worth is, the definition of net worth is all of your assets minus your liabilities. So an asset could be like you owning a car. It could be you owning a rental property. That factors into someone's assets. Liabilities are things like debt, student loans, things that you owe other people money for. And then Christian, you're exactly right. Working income is just what's flowing in on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis. And they're very, very different. It's like, and how many people don't understand the difference between these two things. That's when you see all these things that people post, like, if Elon Musk were to donate 4% of his wealth, we'd solve world hunger. And it's like, it's so laughable because they don't understand that Elon Musk has a net worth of millions and billions of dollars, not a working income of millions and billions of dollars. Don't get me wrong, don't get me wrong, he doesn't skip any meals, right? He's making good income as well. But his net worth is not equal to his working income. Number 14, rich people manage their money well, while poor people mismanage their money well. We'll talk about money tracking also towards the end of this call, or again next week, and we'll talk more about what money management means and what it means to have great money habits. Number 15, rich people have their money work hard for them, while poor people work hard for their money. This goes back to the Chipotle example, right? People that work really, really hard to get paid $7.25, $10, $15 an hour versus someone who has, let's call it just $10,000. And then they elect to put that $10,000 in some sort of investments, like buying a rental property, putting it into index funds, putting it into a Roth IRA, whatever it is, whatever investment strategies they are using. Rich people have their money work for them, and whatever money they touch multiplies, versus poor people who work hard for their money. Number 16, rich people act in spite of fear, while poor people let fear stop them. Again, the difference between someone who is in an abundance mindset versus someone who is in a scarcity mindset. So just as an example, it's really, really scary going after buying your first rental property. And someone who's in a poor person's mindset, they don't invest in things like that. They might not open a Roth IRA. They might not invest in stocks because they let fear stop them. Versus rich people who say, you know what, I am nervous about this, I am scared, and I'm going to act in spite of fear, not let it stop me. A lot of people think that the opposite of fear is lack of fear, or courage, but really what it is the opposite of fear is having the courage to do something in spite of you having fear. And it's actually positive to have fear and act in spite of it. And number 17, lastly, rich people constantly learn and grow, while poor people think they already know. Oh yeah, I already know that. While rich people understand that they never step into the same river twice. So even if they hear something, like you might hear something today that you have already heard before, like, oh yeah, and I know what a credit card is. Cool, what's your credit score? Just kidding, I'm throwing shade. But they understand that they're constantly learning, constantly growing. One of my favorite stories around this sort of what I call a white belt mentality. And a white belt, just to give you some reference here, a white belt in jujitsu and judo is like the most basic level. It's like when you first start martial arts, it's the first belt that they give you. And it means that you're in a constant state of beginnership. You are new, you are learning. And so when I say a white belt mentality, I'm also referring to someone who's constantly learning, constantly growing. And so here's a really great story that I like to use around this. The father and inventor of judo, Kano Jigoro, he was one of the most esteemed black belts in the world when he died. And on his deathbed, he gathered around his students, his top students, and told them that his final wish was to be buried in his white belt, wearing his white belt, and to be remembered as a learner and not as the black belt master that he was, because he acknowledged that we are in a constant state of beginnership at all points in time. So that wraps up the 17. Now, if you're hearing this and you're like, well, Anna, how can I change my financial situations and course of generational wealth with just declarations and a positive mindset? You have to understand that this isn't coming from me, right? This is coming from hundreds of studies of the rich and wealthy. Plus, you got to consider that your current financial blueprint has gotten to where you are now, has gotten you here. And if you aren't 100% happy with where you are and you want to improve your financial situations, why does it hurt to help and change what's not working, right? So you might as well implement, and you might as well take on these 17 wealth files if you want to change your financial situations. Cool. Alrighty, let's talk about credit cards. First thing here, raise your hand if you own a credit card, like you have one right now, it's in your wallet. Okay, keep your hands raised if you have a credit card. Keep them raised, keep them up, keep them up, keep them up. Okay, Sherry has a credit card, Ben has a credit card, Jared, Sydney, Kayla, I already said Sherry. Okay, and Ethan Brown. Okay, beautiful. Okay, awesome. So most of you guys have a credit card. If you don't, I want you to add to your list of action steps, leaving this call, get a credit card. Okay, and I'm going to share with you what I used as my first credit card if you're not quite sure where to get started. But I won't spend too much time on that since most of you on this call do have a credit card. So I'm going to be teaching you here some of the basics on how to work the system, understanding how the system works, some things that I didn't know until like this year, how to raise your credit score using those laws and those systems that we're going to talk about. And then also we're going to wrap up with how to negotiate with your bank to increase your credit allowance, decrease your APR, and also how to potentially even negotiate a late fee, a late balance, or even completely get rid of fees on your credit cards from your bank. Okay. Okay, so some things on credit cards here. First off, your credit card is like your adult report card. It lets people know, it lets the bank know how reliable you are and how well you pay people back. It is your credit card, or it's your report card. And when you know how to work the system, you can get access to many assets. But you have to know how to work the system. So let's talk about the system. These are the 4 pillars of money. This comes from my coach, Mike Chu. So 4 pillars of money here. Just run through these really quickly and then go into some actionable items. Number 1, money is simple. Money follows laws. So many laws. If you understand those laws and you understand the systems by which they work, it's just a game. Like that's how I view money. It's a game. Investments are a game. Saving for retirement, how fast I can save my first million. It's a game. It's exciting because I know how to work the system and I have really great mentors that teach me how to work the system. Number 2, have a CEO mindset around your finances. And what I mean by that is make sure that you're cutting any expenses that are unaligned with what your goals are. Number 2, it's increase your earnings. Guys, we are so lucky to be in an organization and be in a line of work where you can increase your earnings whenever you want. It's not like you have to take on 20 additional hours at Chipotle just to make a couple hundred more, right? You can do 10 extra demos. And if you're at 30%, that's like $300 additional dollars, $700 additional dollars, depending on like what your averages are, what everything in your pocket on maybe 12 additional hours of work, 15 additional hours of work. Are you kidding me? If not more, once you hit bonus land and you're creeping closer towards 50% commission. So earnings increase. And then lastly is optimize investments. We're not going to talk about investing on this call today. That could be its own, we could talk about the topics that we're diving into today for hours. Investment, you could talk about for days, years, like you'll never stop the conversation around investing. But having a CEO mindset is also thinking about optimizing the investments. Number 3 is the power of knowing your numbers. And we're going to talk again about financial tracking and why it's so important. We'll at least get to that about why it's so important today. And then number 4, it's becoming a great money manager. And you accomplish this through habits and through routines. Before I dive into some credit hacking or just some tips around credit, I want you guys to understand that money and food are incredibly similar. We track spending, or I want you to track spending, like someone who is like a bodybuilder would track caloric intake. I think we all know conceptually, just from like existing in the world, that if someone were to track what they ate, they would eat more than they think they're eating on a regular basis. It's the same thing with money. People spend more than they think they do when they're not tracking it. So when you're not tracking, you're not in control. You can't influence anything because you don't even know. You're ignorant about your financial situations. Okay. And then last thing here is that the key to getting rich is getting started. It's taking one additional step. It's taking one action step. It's just getting started. People often say that, oh, half the battle is knowing. No, that's not half the battle. That's like 5% of the battle. If you don't do anything, if you leave this call and you're like, wow, that was interesting, and you never look at your notes again, everything that's coming out of my mouth right now, you being on this call, is a waste. Like, we're wasting your time, we're wasting my time. So the key to getting rich is getting started, is taking action. Okay, so now that we've got that, let's talk about what impacts credit score. 35% of your credit score, the weight comes from what your payment history is, how reliable you are, how often you pay on time. And late payments hurt you significantly. This is the number one thing that impacts your credit score, are late payments. So make sure that you're paying on time every single time. Pay on time every time. Even messing up once, guys, even messing up once can hurt your score. And I'll talk to you in just a second about how you can call the bank to see how you can waive your first late payment. But you don't want to bank on that, right? You don't want to bank on it, no pun intended. 30% are amounts owed. So this is how much you owe and how much credit you have available, AKA your credit utilization rate. And you want to keep this rate under 10% at all times. Under 10%. That's an excellent score. Under 10%. So if you have a $1,000 credit utilization rate, or sorry, if you have a $1,000 credit allowance, you want to make sure that you only ever have a balance of 100. You're paying it off immediately. And if you're new to building credit, I tell people you want to use it like a debit card, like as if it's a debit card, and every time you make a payment, you just go ahead and pay it off immediately. When you get to more credit, you can start to leverage the credit you have to build assets, and you can put bigger payments through. And there's like ways that you can actually use your credit allowance to your advantage. But when you're starting off, especially, you want to make sure that you're just keeping this below 10% at all times. That's 30%. That's significant. It's almost as much as late payments. 15% of your credit score is factored in from the length of your credit history. So how long you've had credit. Now, many of you are young, you're, in your 20s or maybe even teens. And so this is like the one that you don't really have as much control over, right? You can't help it that much. But when you look at the next one, when it says 10% new credit, your older accounts are better accounts. So whatever your first credit card is that you open, don't ever close that line of credit for that credit card. Keep it going. Even if you don't use that card anymore, even if you don't even have that card anymore, just keep that account open so that it shows length of credit history, and it adds on reliability. So you got to think about the way that a bank is looking at an individual and seeing how reliable they are in being able to pay back their credit. The longer someone has had it, it shows that you're more reliable. And then the other 10% is more minor things like inquiries, whether they're soft or hard inquiries, meaning like whenever you apply for a new card, they'll look into your credit history, and that's an inquiry. The number of accounts opened in the last 2 years. So these are things that's not going to affect it really that much. So you don't really have to worry about it too much. You just want to make sure that this isn't like a sky high number. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about negotiating with your bank to get a better APR, cancel annual fees, get higher credit allowances, waive late fees. Now, the first thing that I want to talk about here is whenever you are in any sort of communication with a bank, keep a running document or a tracker of the calls. I'm talking track the date, the time, the rep's name, the rep's number, what was covered on the call in detail. Even when talking about something like increasing credit limit. Keep in mind, banks are a business. They are a business, and they have so many little strategies to get people to either forget what inquiries or like what they've asked of the bank, or like all these things. And so you want to make sure that you have a running document of all of the calls. And what you want to ask, you want to make sure that you ask, hey, by the way, what was your first and last name? Okay, can you spell that for me? Great. And then what is your representative number? Great. And so it shows that you came to play. You came to play. You know what you're talking about. And they can't like gyps you in any way. And it shows that you're serious. It shows that you're documenting everything. So for example, let's say that you call your bank to increase your credit limit and Bill on the phone tells you, hey, I'm going to increase your credit limit to 9,000. It's sitting at 5,000 right now. I'm going to increase it to 9,000. And then you look like a couple days later, it's not done yet. And you call back and you're like, hey, why isn't my credit score increased or my credit limit increased? And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. If they say, no, we're not going to do that, you can tell them that you have record of it. Well, I talked to Bill at this time on this day. This is his rep number, by the way, from this branch of this bank. And we had this conversation that he's going to increase my credit limit to 9,000. Boom, problem solved. So here's how you can call. Let's talk about negotiating anything. But the way that let's start with canceling an annual fee, for example. Here's what you want to do. A month before your next annual fee, so let's say that your annual fee is on March 23rd or like the end of March. You're calling into February. And what you want to say is, hi, my name is Anna. I'm just calling to confirm that I'm not paying an annual fee this year. And if they're like, well, no, you are paying an annual fee, you want to say, well, I'd rather pay no fee at all. What can you do about that? If they're still fighting you on it. Well, at this point, I know that there are other cards offering similar benefits. I would like to stay with you guys. I've been working with you guys for the past 5, 10, whatever years. And I don't want this to be the reason that I choose to switch banks or switch cards. So what are you noticing about the way that I'm saying this? Let's get some people chiming in. Just go ahead and unmute. What are you noticing about the way that I'm communicating my demands, my desires?
You're taking control of the situation.
Yeah, taking control of the situation. Yeah, Christian?
Yeah, you're just taking a direct approach, basically like not kind of like beating around the bush, if you will. You're telling her or him what you want to do and letting them know that you have other options. So they're gonna think, because their job is to have as many people as possible, so they're not gonna want to lose someone, especially who's been around for a minute. So they're gonna be more liable to negotiate with you on that.
Yes. So another way to say this is talk with superior language rather than inferior language. What you don't want to do is you don't want to call your bank and say, hey, I have my next annual fee in a month, and I was wondering if can I get that waived? What are they gonna say? No. Thanks for calling. No. So you want to make sure that you're speaking with superior language. I'd rather pay no fee at all. What can you do about that? By the way, they can always waive any fees. They can do a lot on their end. You just have to ask. I think about, and when you're speaking with human beings, there's so much that you can get done just by asking for it and asking for it in a way that you're using superior language. Like I think about the time that it was like my last day that I was going to be home before I went back to college. And I just like procrastinated my oil change, and my dad and I usually change my oil together, and I didn't want to do it alone. Like I didn't want to like leave my car somewhere to get it done. So I was like, man, it's the last day. I got to buy an oil filter. I don't have any left. And I called the place at 5:03 and they closed, or excuse me, I called the place 10 minutes before they closed. And they were like, well, we're closing in 10 minutes. I'm not sure if you'd be able to get here on time before we close. And I was just like, well, if you were to leave it with the service department, I know they're still open. Can I pay for it through the service department? Can you leave it out for me and I'll go pick it up? And just because I asked, and just because like, even though they were closing, that department was totally closing, like just because I asked, they were like, yeah, actually we can do that. Or I think about Zach Jose, who I'm not saying that you should always go last second, because like I wouldn't, I'm like, you don't want to be that person that's always going into restaurants at the last minute. I'm not encouraging this. All I'm saying is that if you're really nice to people and you acknowledge that they are people, people will go to the ends of the world for you. I think about Zach Joes, who's called pizza places before, like right before they closed, to open a pizza and said something like, hey, I understand you guys are closing so soon. Like, totally understand if you can't make it. I would just really, really appreciate it if you guys would be able to make this pizza. And they're always like, you know what? Like, screw it. We like you. Yeah, we'll make it. This happens so many times. Ask him. But you want to just make sure that you're talking as if whatever it is that you want to happen is going to happen. Now, I do want you to just like something disclaimer. This isn't guaranteed. Like, always remember that this is never guaranteed, but you never know unless you try it, right? Like, if it doesn't work out, you're just in the exact same place that you were before you asked. It's like if a customer were to ask you, hey, is there anything that we can do? Is there a discount that we can do on that? Why, so glad you asked. In fact, we do have a buy three, get one going on right now. Which one, like, what 3 gift sets do you want? What 3 sets do you want? So we have that in our business if someone were to ask us for a discount. So why wouldn't that be everywhere else? I promise it is. But it's not guaranteed. So I do want you to remember that as well. Okay, so here is how to negotiate if you have a late payment that has accidentally gone through and you want to negotiate that late payment so that you don't get that 35%, going to your credit score. You're not knocked for that. And again, not guaranteed. And you don't want to do this more than once, right? You don't want to do that more than once. But like a way that you can do this is you can say, hey, I have been a client for X number of months and years, and I would hate for this to be the one thing that would drive me away. And I would like that one missed payment removed. So, hi, I'm calling about a missed payment. I've been a client for X number of months and years, and I would like this one missed payment removed. I would hate for this to be the one thing that drove me away from continuing to use this line of credit. Here's the key phrase, though, that you want to put after you get the yes. You want to say, I also want to confirm that this missed payment won't be reported to the credit bureau, because the bank could waive that payment. But if it still shows up on your record through the credit bureaus, it's still going to knock your total credit score, right? So I would like to confirm that this missed payment won't be reported to the credit bureau. And then the last one that's on here, or the last 2 here, negotiating a better APR. You can say something like, I've been paying my payments on time every time for the last blank number of months or years. I know that there are other cards that offer better annual percentage rates. So what do you have in your client retention options when it comes to APR so we can continue doing business? Because I would like to stay with you guys. And I have this, I'm just about to pull this up. I do have that scripted because I know that's a pretty long phrase. And so I'm going to go ahead and just drop this into the chat box so that you guys can copy and paste this. Alrighty. Okay, there's that one. So again, I have been making my payments on time. I know there are better options out there, similar to the canceling the annual percentage fee, the annual fee. I would like to continue doing business with you guys. I was wondering, what do you have in your client retention options so that I can stay with you guys? And then the last one, some verbiage around getting a higher credit allowance. Now, who can raise their virtual hand or just chime in? I'd actually rather just you speak. Who can chime in and tell me why you want a bigger credit allowance?
Because if you're sticking to that 10% that you were talking about earlier, then you have more that you can kind of work with.
Nice. Exactly right, Sydney. So what you can do here is same thing, same way that you're going to start it. I've been paying my bills on time for the last X number of months or years. I have some bigger purchases coming up that I would like to use you guys for. So I wanted to see if you could increase my credit utilization. I have some large purchases that I would like to go through you guys for. So I wanted to see if you could increase my credit utilization. But the biggest takeaway here is that you have to speak with superior language rather than with inferior language. So what you want to do with credit allowance is that you want to go in and every 12 months, you want to call and increase that number. Call and increase that number. Okay. Now, if you're someone that's newer and you're like, I don't know if I trust myself to have a higher utilization rate or a higher credit allowance because my utilization rate is going to be off whack, maybe don't do this. But I'm telling you, for if you want to leverage your credit to make larger purchases and always stay below 10%, it's always in your best interest to do that. But know thyself, right? And then the last thing here is I'm going to speak very, very briefly on tracking. We're coming up on time. We've got about 3 minutes left, which means I'm not going to be able to go through all of this. And I'm not going to have time for a Q&A. However, jot down in your notes, your calendars, that I will be on Zoom, on this Zoom that we are currently on Wednesday, which is February 30th at 9:30 p.m. And I'm going to be going through exactly how I do all 4 things that I track on a either monthly or bi-weekly basis. And like just how I do all of this. Now you'll have access to all of my forms that I use. And you can ask a lot of questions and we can have some more one-on-one or like 5-on-1 or 10-on-1 time. Okay. Okay. So a couple of things on money tracking. Why do you want to track your finances? The first thing I think of is peace of mind. I think of you being able to have control, you being able to influence the outcomes, you learning to be a better money manager rather than your money managing you, right? And also, when you have awareness of that, you can start to create change. If you don't know anything about it, it's like if you're closing at 20%, like if you close on every 2 out of 10 demos and you're not tracking that, like you have no idea that is happening. How are you supposed to fix it so that you can get back up to the average of 6 or 7 per 10 demos, right? It's like same thing. If you don't know, how are you supposed to fix it? And so four things to track on a weekly or bi-weekly or monthly basis. First thing that you want to do, jot this down, is you want to find out your consistent monthly expenses. So how much are you spending on, like, do you have subscriptions that are coming in every month? Do you have like a reoccurring payment for rent that you do or utilities that you do every month? So just figure out what it costs for you to just exist on a month-to-month basis, right? What does it cost for you to live? The second thing is that I do a net worth tracker every month. I can send you guys the form for this. I'll put this into the chat box, or I'll put this into our group chat for Six Figure Academy. Net worth tracking every month. Expenses tracking every 2 weeks from the previous 2 weeks. So like, what have I spent money on in the last 2 weeks? How much money am I spending on food every week? These are really, really important numbers to know and just have so that you're able to influence them. And then lastly, to wrap up here, it's percentage-based budgeting every 2 weeks. So whatever money is coming in, I allocate it to certain places depending on percentages. And I do this every 2 weeks. So I don't just have, oh my gosh, I just made $2,000. I can use this on whatever I want. I allocate it towards travel, towards gifts, towards like giving. If I want to contribute to charity, I allocate it to like a financial freedom fund. I'll allocate it to paying off the credit card. I'll allocate some to taxes, and I make sure that I have a plan for all of the dollars that are coming in, because tracking is the ultimate way to control your finances and have that peace of mind. Okay. Last thing that I'm going to say, it is 6:01. So I'm going to make sure I get everybody off of Zoom here in the next like 15 seconds. Remember though, the key to getting rich is getting started. So action steps. Number 1, get a credit card if you don't have a credit card. Number 2, figure out your money blueprint so that you can start to like reconfigure what you are telling yourself surrounding money, so that you can open yourself up to make more money in the future. And then number 3, get started on tracking. Get consistent with tracking. Figure out your monthly expenses. Start using the forms that I'm going to send you. Don't just get them and be like, this looks cool. Never looking at this again. And you'll find that your net worth will increase every month just because you are tracking it and you have influence over it. Alrighty. So that's what I've got for you guys. I hope you guys all got a ton of value. I know you guys' team meetings are starting here at 7. So you are all good to hop off of Zoom. Remember, next week, Wednesday, 9:30 p.m., live financial tracking with me on this Zoom. And we can do a full Q&A session from this call as well. Alrighty. Sweet. As you leave, make sure you give a fist bump to the camera, and I will see y'all later. Adios, adios, adios. Adios, adios. No problem, Ben. My pleasure. See you guys. See you guys. Peace. And that's a wrap.